the office is no longer an obligation, it's an option. And that changes the dynamic entirely.
Welcome back to Brave Ideas, where we chat with the leaders in commercial real estate to answer all questions space as a service and help office real estate reposition to meet the evolving demand from the future of work. If you're an investor, fund manager, developer, landlord, operator, property manager, agent, or broker, hit that subscribe button. And if you prefer to watch our show or join the newsletter, head over to braveideas.media. I'm your host, Caleb Parker, and this is episode 8 of season 16, brought to you by Mute and FlexSpace AI. In this episode, I sit down in the Work.Life podcast studio in Clerkenwell with their new CEO, Paul Dutnall. Paul spent the last 6.5 years helping build Work.Life from a handful of locations to 14 workplaces across England in London, Manchester, and Reading. And he recently stepped up from COO into the CEO role. We unpack how that happened and what it takes for someone to grow into the top job. Paul shares a very candid view on employer and employee relationships, why they're always time-bound, and what that means if you're trying to keep ambitious A players in your business without holding them back. From there, we zoom out into Work.Life's internal evolution, how to protect the heart of a brand as you scale, and what it looks like to codify service, experience, and culture so they show up consistently in every workplace. Paul explains why they went through the rigor of becoming a B Corp and how that framework now keeps the whole team honest as they grow. We also dive into the shift from the office as an obligation to the office as an option and how Work.Life is responding with a mix of memberships and true on-demand. Paul lifts the lid on their partnership with FlexSpace AI and what happens when you treat non-contracted space as a full e-commerce product and how data, automation, and dynamic pricing start to change the economics of meeting rooms, studios, and short-term offices. Along the way, we touch on design and CapEx and how Work.Life thinks about experience-led design versus just, quote, beautiful offices, and why the small, thoughtful details can matter as much as the big-ticket amenities when you're trying to create a place people actually want to go to. Now, before we kick off this episode, check out this quick clip about our partner Mute.
If you're a landlord or flex operator trying to future-proof your building without wasting time or money, this is for you. Mute turns traditional fit-outs on their head. Their Mute modular acoustic rooms can be built, moved, or reused in days, not months. That means lower CapEx, less waste, and faster returns, all while creating quieter, more beautiful spaces your members actually want to work in. No demolition, no downtime, no sunk cost. Just smarter design that upgrades, reuses, and profits. From static white boxes to dynamic workplaces, head over to mute.design/brave to change the game for offices that never stand still.
Pretty cool, right? All right, well, let's go ahead and get into this conversation with Paul. Welcome to Brave Ideas, Paul.
Thank you for having me. Really pleased to be invited, Caleb. Thank you.
Well, thank you for hosting in your podcast studio at Work.Life here in Clerkenwell.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, happy to have you here.
It's a cool setup, and Chris was kind enough to come in and hook us up with all the equipment and kit, so really appreciate this and wanted to give you a shout out for that.
Thank you. Yeah, and a shout out for Chris, who's a magician with all this stuff.
He was a magician this morning for sure. And I will say, your coffee here, I love coffee. I'm a big coffee connoisseur. It's tasty. I've got some cinnamon inside of it.
Let me also then shout out Redemption Roasters, who are our coffee partner. I'm glad you like it.
We'll get a link from you to put into show notes.
Great. You can never underestimate the importance of good coffee. And
100%. It's like oxygen. Can't live without it. At least for me. I want to dive in. You've been with Work.Life for many years now. You're the CEO, and you didn't start off as the CEO.
No, I didn't.
So let's talk about that journey.
Yeah, sure. I've been with Work.Life about 6.5 years. And my experience previous to that was in more traditional hospitality, food and beverage hospitality. I'm an operator at heart. I think I still am. And I joined Work.Life to head up operations initially six odd years ago, and have kind of sort of evolved from there. That has looked like making sure what we deliver for our members in our spaces is exactly what we imagine it to be at the level that we aspire for it to be, and making sure our team are connected to that and able to impact that. And over time, look at how the whole sort of business operates to support that as best as it can. And that's how my roles evolved over the years, previously COO. And as of a couple of months ago, Elliot and David, our co-founders, who I still work with really, really closely, have given me the opportunity to move into this role, which I'm really excited to be doing.
No, it's awesome. It's a great testament to potential career opportunities in our industry. We were talking just before that it isn't always the case that you can move up the ranks all the way to CEO, maybe at one company, but throughout your career you might, but it has worked out that way for you. What's any advice of someone in a sort of junior or mid-level position that might have aspirations to be the CEO one day?
That's a very good question. I perhaps should have anticipated it. I think, and I'm just leaning on my experience here, it's a young sector still. It's a young industry. To an extent, we're still finding our way, finding our fit. Operators are designing in different ways. And we talked, as you said earlier, about the distinction between providing a job and providing a career for somebody, which is the latter being what we would aspire to do, but not always possible as you kind of smaller and kind of developing. The other side of that is, I think there's so much room to be creative, to take the initiative, to try new things, to generate ideas, to problem solve, to create. And I think if you're somebody that's consistently trying to do that for your business, especially in a smaller team, that work will be really noticed. That impact will be really noticed. Certainly I've found at work, and it's partly a work-life culture potentially, but I think it may track to other smaller operators. You're able to have a strong voice, and if something is rational and something sounds like it's going to make a good difference and it's aligned to what the business is trying to achieve, you'd be allowed to get after it or support getting after it. And I think if you're consistent about that, in my opinion, it shines the spotlight, right? And that's not necessarily why to do it, but I think that's what creates opportunity, and kind of see where that goes.
It's good advice, and I want to take that topic just a little bit further in a different direction,
Sure.
Maybe the opposite direction. But two pieces of advice: one to other operators, and number two to the individual. For those people who do want to accelerate in their career, maybe to become the CEO one day of a company, when that opportunity doesn't exist within their existing company, what should they do? But also, what should their employer do when there's no opportunities for that, when they see that their people are ambitious?
Good questions, particularly the latter. Maybe on the first, it's obviously dependent. Again, survey of one, and speaking from my experience here, the route I've taken wasn't immediately obvious. It wasn't sort of preordained or as far as I know, planned. And I think it came as much out of creating an impact, contributing, creating value, and the emerging opportunity that stem from that as anything else. And so, I would say on one side, even if it's not a visible career route for somebody coming in, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I think ultimately, if you do create value, if you do contribute, if you do that consistently, if you can sort of show your stuff in that way, and you will be allowed to show your stuff, I think, in businesses like ours, these things can emerge. On the other hand, if that isn't an opportunity, I think that's also fine. We're sort of maybe segueing over into my thoughts and principles around being an employee, being an employer, and that relationship, which can be murky territory. There's a few taboo topics perhaps, but I think one of them that, in my opinion, shouldn't be so taboo is that these relationships are time bound. That there is definitely a period of time, ideally, where a person and a company are looking for things from each other that match up really, really well, and they can have a great relationship for a period. And there's clearly periods of time where those things don't match up. They may be that the person has other aspirations to what's available, which is to the latter point. I think organizations have a responsibility to contribute to that person's growth and development, to seek out career opportunity for great people. No one wants to lose a great person, but also accept and I suppose celebrate that they have been part of that person's journey and help them on that path. And conversely, there may be times where an organization is looking for different things. And I think that's okay too, provided it's done with empathy and done in the right way. And I think understanding that, and particularly, it is not uncommon now for people to have careers that span lots of different roles, maybe lots of different simultaneous things at the same time. Portfolio careers, I think they're called. I think that should be a common thing and a celebrated thing, and we are part of that for somebody in a period, or an employer is, and vice versa. As long as everybody is contributing to the other party, that's a really healthy thing. And that's probably how I think about it. And then the rest is kind of case dependent.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think what you're describing is we need to have a relationship with the human being, the person first. And secondary is the relationship to them as an employee. And so we all want to attract the A players, and we have to accept that the A players are going to be ambitious, probably.
Absolutely.
And we want them during that time that we have them. And if there are opportunities to accelerate their career within the organization, fantastic. If there's not, fantastic for them. And because if they go on and accelerate in their career, it might be, especially if you had a great relationship with that human, they come back to you.
Completely. That's a good point. On the ambitious A players point, I think it's important to understand, if you are running a business or a company and you're seeking that type of person, that they have that ambition, and you have to match that if you want to carry on the journey together, and that's a responsibility of the business too.
Well, congratulations to you on your journey, CEO. I think it's a testament to your hard work, the value that you've provided to Work.Life over the years, and I think it's a great case study for people in our industry. So I wanted to have that conversation with you.
Thank you. Likewise, I'd like to say I really love this company, and you've been here a long time, which I maybe feel like part of the furniture. I don't know if in a good way or a bad way for others. So it's a privilege, and it really is about what gets me out of bed in the morning is the opportunity to go and contribute and try and make a positive difference to what we're trying to do. And this sort of expands that horizon, which is great for me. But certainly the hard work starts now. It hasn't finished at this point.
Wise words. So let's go a little bit more practical in terms of this time that you've grown and accelerated in your career. What do you think has been the biggest evolution during your career journey so far at Work.Life?
Yeah, I'll probably break that into a couple of lenses. Internally, I think our evolution, and continues to be, is, I think, and taking no credit here, Elliot, David, and our team developed a fantastic brand experience that you could see the through line was really, really strong, stemming from a lot of the reasons why the business is set up in the first place, about trying to create a different place to work where who you are and who you are at work is one and the same, and that work and life have that synergy and not this sort of separation that maybe is another way of experiencing work. And it was a beautiful experience that I came into 6 odd years ago. And I think the biggest internal evolution really has been around the challenge of trying to continue to deliver that, but do that at scale. Obviously, we have more spaces than we did. I think we're 14 spaces now. I think we were sort of 6 or 7 at the time. And there's a natural evolution in how you do things, the level of sophistication behind your processes and the way you continue to deliver, the different ways you have to create the ability to repeat that experience at scale without managing it in the way you did before, if that makes sense. And we talk about that again.
Can we go deeper on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, at the most simple level, when you have a handful of spaces, you can be everywhere. We can manage it by, I think there's a hospitality phrase I learned, which is management by walking around. You can be in it. You can have a much shorter line between the founder's vision and what people are doing. It's a lot more implicit. People sort of just get it. Obviously, there's less people and less complexity and complexity operationally tends to come with number of people more than it does with revenue or other things. It's coordinating people and getting everyone on the same hymn sheet, balanced with giving people the autonomy to make good decisions and do what they think is right. That just gets exponentially harder as you grow. And particularly with the service experience that we're trying to deliver and the care that we genuinely have for our members, how do you make sure that is a cornerstone of every single experience in every single space with every single person repeated over time and 7 years on and double the number of spaces and beyond. You go through a process of what is fairly intuitive and implicit to making it something that you can codify and repeat and is explicit. And I'm summarizing pretty heavily there, but that process is, and we're still going on that journey, is quite an important one. And so there's been a fair evolution in how we do things, but maybe more interestingly is what hasn't changed, which is that DNA, that heart is crucial to us, and that has stayed consistent through that time. And that balancing act has been a really, really cool part of the challenge here, I think, and something we've managed quite well.
Well, I can only imagine from the outside, but I know you guys in this journey have become a B corporation. And what I'm imagining is that part of the journey was a blend of the heart, because you believed in impact. I think that was part of David and Elliot's vision anyways from the beginning. But also to become a B corporation, you have to be very organized, and there's a very thorough application process that you have to go through and make sure that you're delivering your business in a certain way. And so I can imagine the codifying aspect of what you described, that B Corp helped with that, or the fact that you were codifying helped you get the B Corp as well. Is that fair to say?
I think it is, yeah. And it's a bit of both, really. At their core, in my opinion, companies are people, systems, and the processes that bring them together. People are the hardest bit, and I think what we got right is the people element. And I think we continue to get right how important that is to us. That's on the top shelf. What we've had to mature and improve over time are the systems and the processes that make that work and make that work as well as we've continued to grow. And B Corp is both an output of having a lot of those things in place that have allowed us to both get that certification and continue to be certified and continue to improve our level of certification, if that's the right way to phrase it. I think we are now the highest scoring multi-site operator, which is a testament to that, and a testament to a continuous improvement gene that I think also runs through the way we try to do things. But it's also a framework that holds us accountable to continue to do that really well, if that makes sense. So it's a virtuous cycle.
Can I ask us to go even one layer deeper on the codification piece? What does that mean in practical terms for the operators that are listening right now? What do they need to be thinking about doing to be able to really get, are we talking about SOPs? I mean, standard operating procedures on paper, Bibles? I mean, what are we talking about?
All of the above. I think the starting, and sorry if this gets a bit boring, but hopefully the operators will not find it too boring. For me, the fundamental question is that you have to answer is, what are you optimizing for? What is it you're trying to deliver? If we're talking service now, we're talking about, okay, the experience in the workspace. Let's say you have a product and you want your workspace to do just so for your audience. And I could explain what we try to do and what we try to create. Once you've got that, that's what you're optimizing for. And everything else then is about how do you put the steps together that increase the likelihood that that's what's going to happen every time. That's the codification process. And yes, that's standard operating procedure, which are essentially documented processes. Of course, it's training. It's a level of monitoring and management that isn't suffocating. It's about continuing to be able to kind of support wherever there's a little bit of inconsistency that you just need to come in and tweak. It's who you hire. It's how you bring that whole sort of bring that person through from sort of being made of the right stuff, let's say, through the process of how we deliver it. It's the systems that maintain that also make it easier to do. And the way we have thought about that, as I say, it stems from what are you trying to create? And we can talk a little bit about, and it might sound a little bit conceptual, but the kind of feelings and the emotions that you would like someone to attach to the experience of being in your spaces that we think are really important to how we perceive what work should feel like and look like. Some of that's practical. Some of that's around feeling productive and feeling like you've done something important and worthwhile. Some of that's also probably more emotional around, a feeling of fulfillment and thriving, excitement and creativity and energy that you want from your workspace. And then you go back through a sort of a ladder of what are the things that deliver that. And without getting too deep on our model, and this is quite research based, both academically and in, we're lucky enough to have tens of thousands of members over time. We've got 8,500 members now, and we have a really lovely relationship where members will be really transparent and really clear with what they're getting, what they're not getting, how they feel about things, where we can improve. The basic layers of that are you've got to get the operational fundamentals right. I'll often say to people, whatever we do, if the Wi-Fi is not working, you're probably off to a full start. Those operational fundamentals are probably what people think of when they think about taking workspace. This is amenity, this is design, of course, but this is more around fixtures and fittings and temperature and lighting and ergonomics. And, is the coffee there available? Good. Are the meeting rooms available? When the phone booths available when I want them, et cetera, et cetera. Video conferencing working well that I need for this type of meeting. You've got to get those fundamentals right. And another element of that is kind of removing friction. That's something that I think is quite important. I'm really inspired by kind of sort of UX design and user experience design that Apple, people like that, as opposed to SaaS, where it's just very, very seamless. And it's actually the removal of all the things that take you out of the experience that is the art of it. So all of that lives in the fundamental layer. Then we're talking about service, but when I think about service in the context of work, and this is a work-life specific thing, I'm thinking about what we would describe as emotionally connecting service. And what we mean there is about creating feelings of being seen and known and cared for individually. So if you remember here, Caleb, what I would want is that you feel like we don't just care for members, we understand you, we know about you, and we care for you individually, and that you recognize, or you sort of feel that we have a relationship with you and we're solving for your needs. And along with that is some of the basics around you can trust us, we're reliable, we're consistent, we're there when you need us, whether that's the team or the underlying services. Then you can come up into the next layer, which is about community and belonging. And this is now, we're now probably stepping away from traditional thinking about workspace, but especially and you asked about what's changed, the external stuff. I mean, COVID is the biggest.
So I want to come on to the external stuff in a moment, but one of the things you said a moment ago is depends on who your audience is. And I want to unpack that a little bit, because I agree, you've got to get the fundamentals right, but everybody has to get the fundamentals right. And then if you got the fundamentals right and you've got a few locations and you want to start scaling, you got to codify the fundamentals, of course. But what I think is more challenging is how do you codify the brand piece? Because to me, when you say audience, I automatically go to who I'm serving. And who I'm serving is depending on the impact that I'm trying to deliver for or support, which goes back to brand, which goes back to brand positioning and how we're trying to attract those people. And you said feeling.
How do I want those people to feel? And those people, or my audience, are attracted to my brand, feel a certain way, and that creates that brand loyalty. Because we can all get the fundamentals right and compete on, free Wi-Fi and flexible workspace. How do we go up a layer and then codify the brand piece and make sure it's consistent? So I guess what I'm getting at is you talked about audience and codification, but the key thing for me is how do you define audience as it relates to your brand?
So for us, we are for small businesses, micro SMEs, I guess is the right phrase. Typically that's from sort of 1 to 50 people, although not exclusively, and we'll get to it. But the size of office and the size of team and that fit is a much more interesting and three-dimensional thing now than it ever was. And therefore we start with that. And the shorthand that we would throw around is that we're for small businesses who care about people, which is as I say, it's a shorthand for the cultural alignment with people that typically we are looking to resonate with and we're looking to serve, rather than a particular sector or whatever. Size of business and that kind of cultural ethos. And then we can back out of that into, well, what does that space look and feel like? What size of offices should we be providing? For instance, here, nothing above 20 desks or so. That's our range. The emphasis we put on co-working space, the emphasis we put on the environment with the co-working space, the fact that you walk into a building, we're ground floor, we have that frontage, we have that connection to the local area. We've picked areas that are vibrant and bustling. We think our audience would love to hang out in anyway. You come into a kitchen space, not a hard reception desk. You come into a busy, bustling co-working area that has a bit of noise and crackle. These are intentional design choices. And then we go back to when you're talking about the fundamentals that we can all compete on. Sure, there is some nuance in adjusting those if I'm serving a 6-person team to a 600-person team, clearly. So you can design them back from something a bit more intentional.
Thank you for diving into that. There's a lot of change that's been happening in the workplace. There's a lot of new demand for flex. There's a lot of demand for specific types of flex. And I'm curious to see, similar to the internal evolution you guys have had, but what sort of evolution have you seen from the customers and in the industry in general?
So we talked a bit about our place in that. So I'm thinking from our part of that market, which is obviously not all of that market. The big one, probably a bit obvious and to state, but important, which is that the office is no longer an obligation, it's an option. And that changes the dynamic entirely. And the first thing that does is go, okay, well, you need to justify what the office's role is. And I think about our audience that would be typically more agile, more interested in other ways of working, exploring ways of working at least. It's easier to kind of reconfigure a 10, 15, 20-person team that is a larger team. So understandably, let's say a founder of a business that we would consider to be a really great work-life member, if I put myself in their shoes, I'm thinking about from zero up, why would I take off? Why would I invest in office space? It's a fairly significant commitment, especially at that stage of business. It's not given anymore. We can work from home or in other ways. We can plug in office and we can talk a bit about how we've solved for that scenario as well. And again, we're working back from the user, I guess, in a sort of clinical way of thinking about it and how their use cases and how they might want to engage with us and how we can serve that. So the starting point then becomes, you've got to validate why the office exists at all. It's not binary. It's not a given anymore. And it's also not binary. It's not I want an office, I don't. It's I want it on Tuesdays. So that
plus not versus.
Exactly. So and I'm not claiming that we've solved this necessarily, but the starting point is, what is the office doing? Where's the ROI on investing in an office space? Can you justify it on a full-time basis, or can you offer it up on a more flexible basis, which we've also done? We have offered up office in a part-time sort of shape where you're taking it for certain days of the week. We refer to it as timeshare in a way where you have complementary businesses sharing office space that suits them, which also allows us to make sure it works economically for us. We've supplemented our core memberships with the ability to take on and consume, I guess, office space that isn't currently under contract. And I can talk about that a little bit more, but I think that's a newer element. And I think you've talked about it here and there, where we're getting into the space of the hotelification or the Airbnb-ification, I guess, of office space. For us, the way I think about that is our base is always and has always been memberships. And this is these are members who want longer term office space with us on a recurring basis. This is their space. A member may sign up to 12, 24 months, etc. This is their private office space. This is the shared office space. They're part and parcel of the kind of core membership. And then there's all that space that isn't currently under contract, whether that be empty offices that are between members, whether that be co-working desks, whether that be meeting space.
Studios.
Podcast studios, exactly. And whilst those amenities are designed for members, there's also plenty of capacity to invite people who aren't members into the ecosystem. And now we're thinking about the use case of, I've got a 15-person team. We're fairly literate, working in a hybrid or remote fashion, but I do want to get that team together, once a month for a town hall, or I have a project that we need a 2-week sprint on and we need to be in the same room with a big whiteboard and all the tools to go and create here. And it's how do you serve for those needs, which are not membership needs, they're not ongoing needs, but they're occasional needs. And so we've looked at that as well. And we describe that whole ecosystem as on demand.
And that on demand is something I've personally been focused on for over a decade. So I really want to dive deep on this with you in a moment. I think it's a natural break to hear a word from our sponsors while I get a coffee.
Sounds good.
So, just grab my coffee here. If you're a flex operator still juggling spreadsheets and manual rate sheets, stop. You don't need to be a wizard to outsmart the big guys. You just need FlexSpace AI. It's your AI-powered revenue team that never sleeps, optimizing prices, automating marketing, and filling your space while you focus on your members. No burnout, no guesswork, no what-if tabs at 2 a.m. With FlexSpace AI, your building works as smart as you do. Now head over to flexspace.ai/brave and start growing your revenue today. Well, I think anytime we talk about on-demand of FlexSpace AI, obviously they're a partner this season. We just heard their advert there. They come into the conversation. I know you guys are working with them to help solve for this on-demand. So I want to unpack it. How's it going?
Really, really well. And exactly right. So the starting point is we had this concept of on demand. We felt that this meets a need. Both meets it's a really useful thing because it meets the need exclusively of businesses who are not looking for permanent office space. It also meets the need of members who, you talked about how the market might have shifted and demand has shifted. It is much more common that for instance, 40-person team may take a 30 desk office. They will also have a need sometimes to get everybody in the same room, which is not possible in their office. It may also have a need to have that overspill capacity on certain days. This enables all of that, this concept, which is really, really great. So it kind of feels like, to me, I think of it as a product in its own right, but also the connective tissue for businesses. So we can get better and better and better at giving people a really bespoke, really one-size-fits-one office solution. And we've worked with FlexSpace, who are fab, really as the engine of building that. So we sort of had this concept, FlexSpace, and Al and his team already have the ability in the sort of sophisticated e-commerce style platform, but appropriate to.
Well, you talked about Airbnb earlier, and
Right, exactly.
in our industry, we have numerous operating systems that allow us to have some e-commerce functionality, but it's not to the Airbnb level.
Correct.
And so I think what you're describing here is it is a full-fledged e-commerce system that allows you to have an Airbnb experience.
Correct. And we without sort of naming names too much, we did our research in terms of different ways of solving this, including building our own. And we were really confident on the FlexSpace solution and our experience. And it's a relatively recent thing. We launched in the last 6 months, has been fantastic. We're really pleased with that decision. Not just from the experience for users. And the thing I'll say on that, you mentioned Airbnb. Obviously, as consumers now, we are all used to the very, very best. We shop on Amazon, we shop on Airbnb. So our standards are comparing world-class solutions to a bootstrap operator that might be doing it in their back room and everything in between. So
Totally.
the bar is high, and it's important to give a user experience that meets that bar. And I think we have done. And that was really important to us, not just to deliver on the concept, but to do it in a way that would get that traction and feel really, we talked earlier about removing friction, making an experience really seamless, that would give us a way of doing that, but also give us that feedback loop so we could learn and learn fast.
So you're describing a bit of the AI piece of FlexSpace AI, because e-commerce is one thing, and I think that will become table stakes soon, e-commerce.
Agreed.
But the intelligence behind the e-commerce to be able to manage the pricing and make it dynamic so you're charging the right customer at the right price at the right time, is that the feedback loop you're talking about?
Definitely. That's an output of the feedback loop. And as you say, I agree completely. I think what we're doing will be the norm. And I think the differentiation will become in how you deploy it. And how you deploy it will be based on the learning from the data and what that infers in terms of how you can improve what you do, whether that be revenue management and pricing strategies, whether that be different ways and different logic around what you might offer and how you might offer it. For instance, we will offer you can take an available office space for up to a month continuously. You can take it for a day, you can take it for a month. You can't take it for recurring months. We talked about the use case. Maybe you want a town hall venue every last Thursday of the month, creating that capability. All of that can be inferred from data. And these are iterations on the initial e-commerce idea. And so I think we will end up with our version of it that works with the way we want to deploy it, and others will end up with their version. But having that feedback loop and having that relationship with Eyal and his team, I think has helped us learn quicker and also iterate faster to test these things.
When you say feedback loop, though, is it?
I'm just talking about the data.
It is the data that is providing to you.
Yes.
What sort of touch points in that data do you look for?
One, I suppose the buying journey, the conversion points. So people will come onto our platform and they will move through stages. We're able to understand how they interact with each stage, where people might drop off, where people may go down a different path that isn't what we intended. We can look at what's popular, what's not. We can A/B test and iterate there to see different ways that we might be able to simulate different buying behaviors or better articulate what we're trying to offer and its value. And then underneath that, revenue data, of course. And I'm not saying other platforms can't provide this. I think I was more making the point that it's both the user experience of the platform as well as the bit under the water that is really valuable to us and has worked really well with FlexSpace. Obviously, the revenue data, the pricing data, as you say, you start to look at demand, peaks and troughs, and you can think about dynamic pricing in that concept. But the ability to do that is really valuable. So it's this sort of stuff. It's nothing revolutionary, but it's the ability to have that at hand. And by going through a good product, a good vehicle, a good engine, as we have, and again, one might say, okay, we could build that ourselves, one might build that themselves. What we have found with FlexSpace is it meets all of those needs and gives us that kind of single pane of glass with all of the data points that one would want to then make the decisions, and then the speed of action to go and test and try and iterate and see if we can improve things.
So we have already had the official advert for FlexSpace. So this isn't intended to be an advertisement for FlexSpace. I'm telling the listeners here, but I think it's important to dive into this because they have come on the scene massively, and I think they're deploying with Industrious now at scale. So they're going to be a big part of our industry. So I really want to dive into this topic because I think the whole e-commerce, AI learning, and then management of the dynamic pricing is going to be maybe down the road table stakes, but is going to be a differentiator, is going to make a massive difference for the income stream that you're describing of this non-contracted revenue. Yeah. So it's very helpful to unpack how you're thinking about this. So if I'm taking a cynical view of this, do you get concerned that too much tech and not enough people involved in this process?
I don't know about concern. I think there's going to be an art to knowing where to put people, where to put tech, and being able to make good judgment calls there is going to be really important. So the way I think about it, zooming out a little bit, is we have our core memberships. We have the opportunity now to supplement that. For instance, we tend to run around 90% occupancy at any given time, and that's fairly stable. So there's always going to be an amount of available space. This is office space. This is outside of co-working and meeting rooms, etc. So the opportunity to offer that out, knowing that it's available, is a great one. And that's where this sort of engine, this e-commerce, this store, this on-demand store, as it were, is working well for us. The other point connected to that is that, let's call it, consumers are much more willing to transact in that way. It wasn't long ago where a tool like this, as good as it was, I think people would have felt uncomfortable purchasing through.
You wanted to come do a tour first and
exactly
whatever.
Right. And we've also applied a very similar methodology to our co-working products, which are designed to be self-service end to end. That doesn't mean you can't come in and touch and feel and speak to someone, and that still happens, but dramatically less than it used to. This is we've done this ourselves separately, but essentially the same logic as we're talking about. It's an e-commerce approach to that journey. I believe we wouldn't have been able to be successful with that a couple of years ago because people wouldn't have wanted to consume in that way. Come in, meet someone, do a tour, etc. It'll be interesting to see how far that goes into office space. And so back to your question, maybe about technology versus the human touch. I don't want to make any big predictions. I think it's as much about being agile and keeping your ear to the ground as it is about having the foresight. But one might comfortably see a place where some smaller offices might also be able to transact in this way. I also think there's a massive emotional element to taking your office space. I think there's the experience, of course, there's the fundamentals, there's, okay, can we do our work here? But I think there's also, I built this business and I want my name on a door or something I can be proud of and feel good about. And some of that, I think, is about being able to be in the environment, to meet the people that are going to be caring for your team, to get a sense of it. Maybe a good parallel is residential property. You know, would somebody take a 2-week Airbnb from a website? Yeah, I don't think you're going to fly out to Portugal and check everything is as is. Would somebody lease an apartment for 2 years in that way? No, you're probably going to want to go and visit and see what you think of it, I would imagine. And so I think there is going to be
Depends on the break clause.
Depends on the break clause.
Yeah.
Depends on the risk. But maybe these are two different buying journeys. So I think that there's a distinction there, number one. And the other point on humans is, well, I mean, this is the big thing, the big existential question. I am go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't want to get too conceptual here, but I'm a big believer in our innate need for face-to-face, in real life connection with other human beings that can't be replicated through technology. Technology absolutely has we've continued to massively inflate our ability to network and connect in a more functional way, and knowledge and everything else. And there's so many advantages, but that in real life thing is not replicatable, in my opinion. So there's going to be a place for that, and it's about how do you fit that. And when we speak to and hear from our members, we run NPS surveys and other sort of more qualitative surveys on a regular basis. The way we do it is each person on their own life cycle is asked questions at certain stages of their time with us, and we can be specific to those stages rather than just a block every quarter or whatever. We find that a really useful way, and then we can connect, people within the same team and different roles within the team, whatever. But we're asking these questions, and we're asking for qualitative feedback too. About 92% of respondents will refer to the team in some way in a connection point. It will be about establishing that, how they made me feel, the fact that I know them, the fact that they know me, or people I've met. It'll be something to do with an element that I don't think technology replaces. So for me, am I concerned? No, I think I'd be concerned if we're just two-dimensional about using technology. A company and an experiences people and systems and the processes that connect them. Technology is part of that. It's just getting better quickly, and the art will be, where is that human touch not valuable?
And on that, are you finding or expecting that the e-commerce and the AI part of the automated aspect of this technology, are you expecting it to free up your team to do other things, to give your team superpowers to do better at the things that they're doing, replace them? Where are you expecting this to go?
4 things. Now I'm going to see if I can remember the 4 things that came into my mind. One is free up the team. And not just in a time sense, as in automating things that would otherwise have had to be manually done that are administrative and repeatable, not just in a time sense, but also in a job experience sense. Typically those are the things that aren't the enjoyable bits of the job. So if you can have human beings doing the things that are more fulfilling and more impactful, that's a positive all the way around. So it is the freeing up, but on both fronts. It is the supercharging, that clearly another application of AI in particular is to expand your thinking and horizons, challenge your brain, give you information and data and tools, and proactively as well, right? It's not just reactive. Here's a dashboard of stuff that's happened. It's a prompt of here's things you should be thinking about or maybe looking to in the future to supercharge the impact somebody can make. So you're enabling your humans. This is not a great parallel, but perhaps it would have been like when the internet appeared and choosing to, will I Google search or will I just look it up in a library,
Phone book.
or a phone book.
Yellow pages.
Yeah. And that would be a crazy thing to do now, but maybe there's a parallel there. And that's about supercharging what somebody's capable of, what an individual is capable of. Definitely there's a level of efficiency for a business. I don't think that's replacing jobs. I think for an operator, us, for example, it's about being able to punch above our weight. It's about being able to grow and do more and create more impact and open more spaces and cover more ground at higher level in a way that is manageable and sustainable for us. So I think it gives you the capacity to just expand very quickly what you're capable of doing without all of the kind of overhead and operational challenges of bringing lots of people in, training them and getting that configured right and everything that comes with that, which is good. So it's not a replacement. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's an amplifier. And the 4th thing is about the members' experience with us. And I think about this in terms of things like, what's the experience of onboarding to us as a member, as a new member? You've taken on an office space, you've signed your contract. That can be quite a clunky next few steps. I think of joining a membership, and we use the word membership intentionally. This isn't a tenant experience, it's a membership experience. So what does that mean? And becoming a member of something should be an exciting, delighting.
Going back to what you said, how you make them feel.
100%. And again, we draw, I think I mentioned Apple a couple of times, which is a fairly obvious example to use. We can talk about others, but it's how you make them feel. You think about the unboxing think about the buying and then the unboxing process of your new Apple product and how much thought has clearly gone into that.
People make YouTube videos on those.
Exactly right. And it's not a functional thing. It's a feeling. Same for us. And that taking a membership, becoming a member of something and going through that process, which does include things like setting up a direct debit and filling out some business rates forms so we can manage it for you, some pretty mundane stuff. If we can use technology to make that a
Easy.
better experience, I mean, even simple stuff, if you've given us a piece of information somewhere previously in a contract or somewhere else, why are we asking you to fill that out?
Yeah.
How can we make that automated and easy for the member as well? So it's not just for our team. And this, you're getting both there, hopefully, but it can support us to create a more delighting experience by automating and processing and improving what the member would otherwise need to do and freeing up our team to focus on the stuff that is going to be a delighter, not a hygiene factor.
I imagine there's a fifth thing. And I think the fifth thing, and maybe this is maybe not the fifth thing to the answer to my question. Maybe it's the first thing on a different question, but revenue, you talked about non-contracted revenue, and, you can have external meeting room bookings through it. Fill out a form. We'll call you back and we'll book the meeting room for you.
Yeah.
You can have e-commerce where it actually get booked. You can have a booking process that's request to book and you confirm after you check availability. You can have the instant bookings and this and that. But then the automated piece, which is what I'm really interested in the dynamic pricing piece, how does that impact the bottom line? And so, the way I'm looking at it for our stuff is like we look at how much external non-contracted revenue, what percentage of our overall income is that going to be? And if I can move the needle or turn up the dial a little bit on that because I've optimized my pricing strategy, yield management, then how much is that going to help my overall EBITDA? So are you looking at it in that financial way as well?
We're looking at it in a financial way. I think there's two bits in what you said, if I follow. One is around automations in themselves to drive it. The other is a pricing, yield management, revenue management sort of side to it. More the former than the latter so far. The simplest way to talk about automation's role in that is we could talk about things like speed to lead, which is an important principle when it comes to working, for example, with our broker partners and giving them what they need, which is probably less fluff. And I need to know what's going on so we can do this together. We can talk about it in terms of those friction points. You gave some examples of someone maybe looking to book a meeting room. Do I need to inquire, wait for someone to come back to me, fill out some forms, go back and forth? Or can we just make this a smooth process? People are ready for that now. People expect that now. And you can have that sort of transaction of, this is what I need. Great, we can do it. Can I purchase it? It's done. You're removing steps and making it easy for the buyer, but you're also making it easy and scalable for the business. So that expands our ability to do a lot more of it, the almost infinite volume, if that makes sense. You don't need more people to be at the other end of that inquiry in order to handle that volume, which obviously opens the doors. These are all directly attributable to revenue. And we have seen that with our on-demand project so far. The revenue. One of the things we put into that is the ability to have non-members book our meeting rooms, which is a concept we had prior, but we're trading about 8 or 9 times better on that front than we were prior. And
wow.
What's changed? Well, and I don't think the way we brought that to market previously was particularly good. So I think we were probably below the line.
So you've increased revenue 8 to 9 times
on that particular vertical, which is external meeting room bookings. Yeah, and that's volume, and revenue will follow.
Right.
So we're assuming, and there are other parts to that. There's a more intentional marketing strategy. We have a fab person in our team who is taking direct responsibility for our meeting and events products, which is new. So there are other facets, and this is part of a joined up and intentional effort. But a big part of that is the vehicle. It is having a really great shop front, essentially, that we can funnel people to that might be interested, that will then very happily buy on that basis. And then it's down to us to deliver a good enough experience that they come back.
8 to 9 times increase in booking volume is phenomenal. That's fantastic. How do you balance your current contracted revenue members and their access to the spaces when you've got the external member increase in demand coming through?
It's a very good question, and I haven't got a full answer to that to that question now.
Is it a problem though?
It's not currently a problem in most cases. There's a couple of elements. One is we have been building and fitting out spaces with the intention of catering for more than our members. So we work to ratios. So for every workstation, which we equate to a member, we have a ratio of phone booths, meeting spaces, breakout space, other amenities that we want to make sure we provide. And we have mapped what we believe is the right ratio. And then we, in the case of meeting rooms, have extended that to accommodate an external audience as well. So one is in fit out. That's obviously not the case in every space, particularly spaces that predate COVID. And we can manage capacities on that basis. So part of the e-commerce functionality is we are listing what's available, and we have a level of control over that. So that's one way. We've built to accommodate. Pricing, as you say, is another dynamic which we haven't yet explored, but is on our radar to explore. put it simply, it's a Thursday today. I don't know how you commuted in. The train was pretty busy for me this morning. This is typically a very busy day in town. This is a completely different dynamic to tomorrow. And therefore, meeting room demand from our members will flow in tandem with that. That's another way. We're also able to block out calendars. So this is, I suppose, connected to what availability we put to on demand, but it's also what availability we create for our members on the days we know that they most prioritize. And we can absorb data and understand usage patterns and try to map to that. And that's location specific. There's some general patterns, of course, but it is location specific. Here in St. Cross Street, we've got a wonderful meeting room suite down here, which has plenty of capacity and is very intentionally designed for that sort of extra usage. Over in Soho, very, very busy, lots of demand. We manage it in a slightly different way. It's not perfect, and there's definitely a level of we're trying to understand where we're going to get pinch points and how we do that. And I think in co-working, there's always been this sort of inherent first come, first serve attitude, same for a lot of the workspace, the shared workspace. And we have definitely gone back and forth on the idea of do you pre-book? Do you allow it to be more fluid? I've generally sat on the idea of more fluid. Again, not to put up more stages, but I think if we experience that pain more regularly, one would have to start to solve for that in different ways.
Which goes back to your feedback loop.
Exactly right. And we know which spaces and on which days and in which instances typically we're going to have that sort of a pain that there's not enough meeting rooms available. And then we can design back from that. We can take that into, how much availability we give externally or not at all. How we give members priority or precedence to book rooms, that kind of thing.
And with your external bookings, I think we'll stay on this topic just slightly a bit longer before we segue. Sure. With the external customers that are coming in and booking, are you tracking their usage in terms of the data to know when it might be time to offer them a membership?
Yes, we used the word codified previously. We haven't built hard rules around this. We are, and it's also a little bit case by case. In the case of a meeting room, the effort there would be to try to deliver a good enough experience and then engage them in such a way that should they have that need again, and we assume they will, and we try to understand what the use case was, they would choose us again. So you can build that rhythm. From there, I think if you're building that rhythm, there's permission to have a wider conversation about workspace needs. With offices, that's probably a little bit more clean. If somebody's coming in and block booking a private office for 2 weeks, and we want to understand what we're solving for them, that then can sort of spin out into, okay, if it's for a very specific, I have cases where I know it's this team and they need space for this project for this team for 3 weeks, and this is what it looks like. That's definitive. Great. Can we enter into the conversation about other things we could provide on a more ad hoc basis? And then there are other cases where, okay, they're in on a level of frequency. We'll have a conversation about membership. So we need to refine and codify. We need to put tighter processes around at what point does that tip over. But we're able to manage it at the moment. Again, I mentioned we launched this concept about 4.5, 5 months ago. We're still learning what they should. I don't want to go over too early. So we're learning on a slightly case by case basis as we're starting to see that repeat business come through. When are the right points to kind of offer up different things?
And that fluidity that you described, does it lean more human decisions, or is it more like looking at the data from the
human decisions informed by data? Is where I put it.
Yep.
And bear in mind, as I say, we're 14 spaces. And we're still at a point where we're able to work in that way. And I think while we can be agile and where we can belay that kind of human judgment and common sense on top of the data, I think in lots of cases that does make sense. Depends, particularly when we're learning a new thing, new product, as it were. And then in other cases, or when you build a level of confidence in it, to kind of make that more programmatic is also smart.
Paul, thank you for going deep on that topic. It's, I think, super important for our industry right now as this becomes more and more part of our day-to-day operations. Another thing that's obviously becoming a big part of what we're doing is the design of the workplaces. There's lots of innovations coming out there. So I'd be curious, I'm going to throw you a loaded question here. Generally, how's workplace design evolved? But take that into how that impacts the CapEx, because I think the supply chain has increased in cost massively. So how are you guys viewing workplace design to creating experiences that people want to come to? How does that then, affect your CapEx budget and when you take on a new site? Because that can make or break whether a site works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then taking that further into how do you value engineering things to make it actually work to deliver that experience?
You're right, sir. That's a big question. I'll attempt to give a fairly succinct answer. We can go deeper on anything if it's helpful. And I will say, being with Work.Life 6.5 years, there are people who are far more experienced than me and knowledgeable on design and on the property dynamics and everything else. But the way we think about it, the way I think about it, well, it's how has it changed? I'd say one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm looking at our space, so maybe not speaking to the wider commercial real estate market, but more to, the market that we play in, is what I describe as sort of aesthetic led to more experience led. I think there's an increasing realization that actually what experience are we trying to create for the people in here, and we work back from that rather than just beautiful workspaces, not wanting to sort of dumb down that point.
So beautiful still important, but it's not the only thing is what you're saying.
Well, it serves a purpose. I think that's the point. And the way, certainly for me, it's all means to an end. Beauty on its own, I mean, that's a whole different conversation about the value of that. But in our context, the design elements, design isn't an isolated thing. We're trying to create back from how we imagine people want to use this space. What do they want to achieve? How do we want them to feel? I talked a bit earlier about almost the experience pyramid, and we were sort of working our way up that. But essentially, we're doing things around the operational, functional, and amenity provision, the service and the connection, and then the communities we're building to create an output, which is in some parts about productivity and achievement, and in some parts about feeling and positive emotions, and I suppose happiness in the workspace. So design and fit out is part of that, is one of the ingredients in that, and doesn't live on its own. So we're very experience led, and I think that is generally a kind of accepted thing, or becoming more of an accepted thing. That's what we're designing for something. And member expectations, I think, have raised as well. There's lots of options, including no office. So you've got this rising tide of member expectations you've got to meet. And so the quality of that, and not just high quality fit out, but also, are you providing the right amenities? But also, have you been really thoughtful about how I'm going to use this space? I'll give you one tiny design story that I like to talk about because I think it illustrates this thoughtfulness point. One of the things that gets picked up most by our members is we have a number of spaces where we've got access control between doorways, and we've all been that experience where you're juggling 3 cups of coffee and a laptop and a couple other things, and I need to get my card out, whatever, to go to this door. We put little ledges next to the door with a little sign saying, hey, let us give you a hand. So you can put something down when you go to the door. Very tiny thing, but it's an understanding of the user journey. People love that touch. These are the thoughtful things. These aren't big investments. For me, I think about design. That's as much about design as anything else. How do we balance it out? I don't know if there's it's an art as much of a science in my mind. We're definitely spending more on fit out, fairly materially than we were in the past. You've just got that really difficult balance that and one must work out between obviously investment and return. I think of our business as this kind of Venn diagram of a traditional sort of property business and all of the economic dynamics that come with that, a hospitality business and everything that comes with that, and a recurring revenue business, because that's how we monetize, that's how we sell. Think about a SaaS business or something like that, and that's a different sort of commercial model. And the middle of that is what we're trying to do, and part of that necessitates not just selling the space once, but keeping it full, keeping that ongoing, ideally growing recurring revenue. And so whatever we're doing on fit out, whatever we're spending on CapEx is part of an equation that says this investment is going to pay back more in higher occupancies and higher desk rates over time, less churn, all the rest of it. Where you draw that line is really, really hard. The way we do it is we work back from some pretty dialed in norms on this is what a work-life space is. This is what we're trying to do. This is what that looks like in terms of flow. This is what it looks like in terms of design. This is what it looks like in terms of amenities. On that point for us, we tend to take smaller spaces. We're here at 34,000 square feet. This is large for us, I'd say. Typically sort of 15, 20, 25,000 square feet. So smaller spaces in neighborhoods that are sort of very central, very vibrant, lots going on. Our model has always been, we're going to optimize for the work needs within the 4 walls and the other needs outside of the 4 walls. So you'll come in here, you won't find a gym, but we'll have a gym partner down the road. So, when we're thinking about investment, it's also about what type of investment. So breakout space, podcast booths, meeting rooms, phone booths, good soundproofing.
So I think it's clever to look at the horizontal community to see what amenities are around. So you don't necessarily have to provide that amenity within your footprint, saves on the CapEx. That's a smart move. But your CapEx cost for your Cat B. I think that when you look at a building, is it going to be the same CapEx every building? And then you might turn a building down because to get it from the Cat A to the Cat B is going to be too much?
It's not identical, but it's thereabouts. It has tended to fall roughly in the same place.
Back to your codification.
Again, working back from what we're trying to do. Exactly. We will definitely turn down a building if we don't think we can achieve what we want. And there are various reasons for that. Not all CapEx related. A lot of it's layout related, thinking about workspaces for people that want, access to obviously great natural light and a certain look and feel in the space and a certain amount of meeting provision and where we put that. So there's a number of dynamics. We like ground floor space is another one.
If you'd like a building, if meets all your tick boxes, but the CapEx to get it from Cat A to Cat B blows your budgets out, how do you value engineer that to make it work?
Well, typically we will like a building. We will put it all on the paper and it will be over budget. And then we start.
That is the typical, isn't it?
So that's not an unusual situation
These days.
100%. And we're lucky to have great partners that we work with. We do the majority of our fit outs with a company called Two, and we've got a long history and partnership, and that helps this point.
Can I just stop you real quick?
Oh, sorry, can I?
You can say that. That's fine. But I think you're talking Modus, and Two
It's
is
Modus,
Two is the second part, right?
Yeah, it's
Tuesday
Modus,
too.
but we work with Two, which is like a subset of Modus.
Oh, right.
I can say Modus if you prefer. But
No, it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure it was accurate. Is that okay?
Yeah, it is actually Two. Toby
Yeah.
Modus is on our board.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But Two is the entity that we do the work with.
Okay. Well, start that again then, and then just continue.
What was I saying?
You say we're lucky we have a good partner. So 3, 2, 1.
And we're lucky to work with really good and really long-standing partners on our design and fit out, which helps this area. But how do we value engineer? I think firstly one would need to be clear on what are the component parts of your product. So what is a work-life space on paper, and what within that are non-negotiables, and work back from there. And the reality is, I can't think of a situation where we found a building that hits every point. And I think that's one of the core judgment points, where you walk away from every building if you can't find something that fits. Or will you find a way to make your product agile enough to be able to look at various types of buildings? And we have done both, right? But I think maybe the pragmatist in me is thinking about, this is what really the key ingredients are, and this is how we can make it adapt, both in terms of value engineering, but also different types of buildings. So
thank you. I think you're right. The supply chain has gone up. It's crazy. Every building we look at today, you have to make these judgment calls. And, ultimately, you got to deliver a great experience, but you also have to make the numbers work. And bridging that gap sometimes is quite difficult. It makes me think I need to have a podcast episode on this and just talk about that one day. But watch this space. I have one final question for you, Paul. This has been a fantastic conversation. And I'm a fan of Simon Sinek. Simon has this thing called Worthy Rival. There's a video that we'll put a YouTube link in the show notes. But he talks about worthy rivals. It's like, who's your competitor that you admire, but you also hate them, but they make you better because they're really good and they're in the industry, and you go head to head with them. But you kind of need them to make you sharper, and they probably feel the same about you. Who's your worthy rival?
I totally understand the concept. Perhaps I don't think I have a rival mentality. I think I'm a very sort of grow the pie, not slice the pie person. But when I think of that example, Sinek's example, and when I think of that phrase, I think a worthy rival is someone you learn from. It's obviously someone you respect. Sure. And I've got a hell of a lot of respect for a lot of the operators and thinkers in our space. We have many. It's not necessarily operators that I would necessarily say this is our competition. You tend to see the same names, and we tend to work in the same sort of markets. But actually, when I think about that, and I think about who do I respect, who can I learn the most from, generally, and maybe it's my background before moving into Work.Life, but I tend to lead to operators and service brands that create really, really great member, guest, customer experiences, and have codified that product and can repeat that, not just in hospitality, but not just in workspace. So, I mean, I mentioned Apple earlier, that sort of seamless, intuitive, simple experience and design. Disney, we talk about how you make someone feel. I mean, there's no one better in the world that has reverse engineered that into their product. And you can see we talked about thoughtfulness, we talked about emotional connection, masters of that craft. So her house, community building, design, experience in their way.
I love their design.
Building a brand around being part of something, which we talked about earlier. We like Monzo a lot. Their user centricity is really cool.
So easy.
That's amazing. Just, again, seamless, intuitive. You don't need any track. You can just do the things you want to do in the way it feels like it should be able to do.
I set up an account in 5 minutes. It's amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly right. And also this kind of breaking of the corporate straitjacket approach that has happened before. I think, maybe flex operators and certainly Work.Life, I think we lean into that a little bit. Gales, big fan of Gales. And I think what they have done is taken neighborhood and scaled it. And, whether or not they can sustain that is a different point, but that's a really hard thing to do, to kind of keep that boutique indie feel and put it all around the country. Big fan of Dishoom, big fan of Black Block. I think this, easy hospitality that's thoughtful. It's not too pretentious. It's just really, really good and really, really consistent. Their team know what they're doing. Everyone's very informed. They make you feel really good, but without making a big fuss of it.
It's even good on Deliveroo.
It's even good on Deliveroo. It travels well.
Yes.
Travels well. Yeah, it's something I missed since we moved out of London. Probably the thing I missed the most. So I'm primarily focused on what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and building back from that, and then looking maybe for examples that might not be the normal trodden path that we can learn a lot from. And I think taking that, I suppose, broader network of inspiration and applying it back to our case, I find is a really useful thing. So I'm sorry, I feel like I've skirted your question slightly, but that's
I think it's a great answer though, because often in macro office real estate world, we are looking at the other buildings and the other landlords and the other operators. We're looking in the, insular, and that's okay. But I think looking outside, what's working in other businesses and other industries, and how do we take those learnings and apply it here? I think it's crucial. And kudos to you for looking at that inspiration.
And I think the through line with those examples and the conversation we had previously is starting with who are you for and what experience are you hoping to deliver for them, and then reverse engineering what you do from there.
Well, that's so good. That's a mic drop and a great way to end this amazing conversation. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time, hosting for the coffee, and for just sharing your experience. This is fantastic. Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care of yourself. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe at braveideas.media. And I'm actively sourcing buildings for a brand-led hospitality repositioning. If you have a lead, an owner considering a sale, or a partner brief, DM me or reach us at bravecorp.co. And until next time, take care of yourself.